And when we talk about voice, this is where it's exciting. You can interact with those apps because of your voice, not because you sat here with a mouse and a keyboard. No more.
Yeah.
So that's like truly what's happening, which is massive. So when it comes to people and culture, we're not asking people like, hey, we're changing from Microsoft to Google Workspace, like your
Right.
email is going to be in a different URL. We're saying where you look for information is fundamentally changing because now instead of having to go look and find, the information can be delivered right to you.
Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, where Josh and I explore the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. Today, Josh, we're talking about mostly our main topic that we're talking about is developing an AI first culture in your organization. But before we get to that, OpenAI has been busy making all kinds of announcements, and there's a bunch of cool things happening that have a huge impact on tourism, I think. I'm sure you'll agree, with respect to some innovations and some technologies and some ways that the tourism industry is going to really be able to leverage AI for customer service and for all kinds of other things. So, Josh, I see you got your fancy cool screen on, so I will let you dive right in. What's going on at OpenAI?
Yeah, so there was a dev day this week, which was super exciting because the team announced four primary new things. First of all, voice is the main theme here. Voice and video are coming to the scene hotter and heavier than I think we may have expected at this phase. There's four things to really note here. One, real-time API, and on a non-technical level, that is the ability to talk to an AI tool speech to speech without having to do speech to text, transcription, clean up, and then text to speech back and forth. So if you were talking to an AI tool, you'd have to build all these in the middle pieces to make this process go, which cause latency. And OpenAI has released over the past couple of weeks their advanced voice mode in the ChatGPT app, which is what this is. So for developers, now we get to build with the same tools that are being used inside of OpenAI's ChatGPT. And if you haven't checked out advanced voice mode in your own app, go for it. It's amazing. It might be available, I think, to pro users now, but it'll roll out to free users later. Super cool. You can have like full-on conversations. It can translate. It can take on different like dialects and cultural, like regional, like pronunciations. It's so cool. So if you're like, just talk to me, I'm Canadian, just talk to me like I'm in Alberta. It'll like switch gears like immediately. Or like I would tell like I'm a Hoosier, I'm in like southern-ish Indiana, southern central, like talk to me like that. And it'll like it'll be like, y'all? So that's one. That's fun. Two, vision fine tuning. This is cool because fine tuning is basically training a model based off of one of the GPT models to behave or perform a specific task much more focused because you're providing training information about here's how you do this. We've been doing that with text this whole time. Now we can do that with images. So for vision applications, both photos and videos, this is going to get really powerful because companies can now build their own versions, their own fine-tuned models that are based off of vision, which is fantastic. It's super cool. Third thing, prompt caching. This is all about saving costs as you talk to assistants. So on the developer side, it's we can add so much more context and we're not getting charged every single message. So if you like, for example, put in 1 million tokens of context, which is a ton, you're going to get charged $5 with GPT-4o instead of getting charged $5 for every single time that message goes through now, like it'll just save that memory and not charge. So it like rolls the memory over and doesn't double up the cost, which is super cool. And then distillation is fine tuning. You can take the larger models and fine tune them again in a more advanced way to make smaller models that are more specific for tasks focused things. This is an approach similar to Apple's artificial intelligence approach. Their Apple Intelligence is just a series of a ton of small models that they built to do very specific things so that their ecosystem can be controlled. So this is a big dev kind of focused launch, but what you're going to see on the consumer side is a ton of new capabilities in the apps that you already use. And there's going to be a whole slew of new experiences or user experiences that have not been unlocked before just due to the voice capabilities getting stronger. So function calling inside of voice as part of the real-time API, which means I can talk to my app and it can be doing stuff in my other apps. That's where it's like think the Marvel Universe Jarvis for Iron Man. Like he's telling it do this, do this, do that. That's where we are. So it's
That's pretty
exciting.
amazing. Yeah. So I think, I mean, obviously a lot of what you're talking about, Josh, is fairly sort of geared towards developers to your point, but it really does allow all of a sudden if you have, I always tell people the limit of what's possible is just your own imagination and creativity. And it really allows all of a sudden for us to take a lot of ideas that we've been talking about, make them happen way simpler, way faster, and way cheaper, which is pretty amazing, right? So now, think about the ability to, for example, the easiest tourism related one is, the customer service chatbot or whatever. I mean, now that has become a lot easier, less expensive, better in terms of
Yep.
the way the tool actually works, the latency. So for those who don't know, latency is sort of just the speed at which it sort of responds or the delay between responses and stuff, much more natural sounding. So, we're getting to a place where you're going to really struggle to tell the difference. I think whether you're talking to an AI agent or a real human at some point pretty soon, we're
Right.
getting pretty close to that point.
Yeah.
I just
Here's
have a quick
one.
question. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I add one last note to that? So Seamus, one of our colleagues in the lab, was talking about this yesterday, and he's been on voice mode all year, just being the oracle. Like, here's what I think is going to happen. This is the iPhone moment, according to Seamus, and I believe this is right. When the iPhone came out, you have all these other phones that people use, and they're like, "What's the big deal? It's a keyboard on a screen. It's less buttons." Like, this is where people are on the hardware side. They're thinking about this as a hardware, like a hardware upgrade. What this is an experience upgrade. The iPhone was useless till the App Store came and until
Right.
everybody built the apps. That's what this is. This is now putting the ability to build the apps. This is the App Store in developers' hands. Voice has been not as accessible up to this point. So the
Right.
floor to get in lower, which means more people can have access to these tools, and we're going to start to see creative new ways of interacting with computers that we haven't seen yet. I think that's the big takeaway.
That's yeah, and that's kind of what I keep telling. I've actually put a slide into my keynote presentation about the paradigm shift that we're about to go through here, right? And the paradigm shift of going to voice, right? I mean, we're gonna interact with technology in a fundamentally different way. I mean, we already have the Ray-Ban glasses where you can kind of talk into them and they can see and all that kind of stuff, but this is
Mhm.
just gonna make it all that much better. Obviously, it's just going to change the game, right? So, like again, for me, I'm a dyslexic, so writing is slow. I can write well, but it takes me a long time, right? But so my ability to talk to my AI tool and sort of have it talk back to me is amazing. And what's cool about the OpenAI's voice new voice features as well is you can be having a conversation, you can interrupt it halfway through, and it can change gears. So before when you use the voice feature on your phone, it'd be like you'd talk to it and then you'd have to like wait for it to say its entire thing. And if you interrupted it, it totally screwed up the whole flow and it was sort of an awkward thing. It was really hard, right? Or, I'd often, my favorite use case actually of the old voice mode, and I haven't even tried it with the new one yet, is put my earbuds in, take my dog for a walk and strategically think about something like do, some strategic planning about, whatever I'm working on, right? And it was
Yep.
always this like back and forth, like slow, whatever. Now I'll be able to be like, no, no, I mean this, no, switch gears, focus more on this, and like have a dynamic conversation with an AI agent, which is pretty freaking amazing. So
Yeah.
your excitement is palpable here. I can feel it, Josh. I'm pretty excited. I haven't played with it too much yet. I do have a question though, because as you were talking, I brought up my ChatGPT instance here. And is it just on phone as far as you know? It is
It's
just on mobile
mobile.
still.
Yeah, so it's on mobile. I'm sure it'll come to the iOS app for iMac or for Mac soon. If it's not already, I haven't tested it on that. But yeah, it's on mobile. So Android and iPhone, I think, is where it's at currently. And if you open your app, if your app is updated and you open it for like the first time since that's there, it should have a pop-up that's like, hey,
That's
try it
right.
out. It's here. So
Yeah.
keep an eye out if you haven't been rolled out to yet. It'll come in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And then I assume in the next few months it'll go out for free users too.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
for
been their
sure.
trend.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely check it out. I'm gonna be taking my dog for a walk today, and having a full-on strategic conversation about actually something that we just talked about before the podcast, which is, kind of our Tourism AI Academy, which we haven't really launched yet, but here's a little hint. We're launching something soon, and actually a platform that we're gonna be launching with it that's gonna be super cool. So stay tuned for that. I mean, actually, that's a good transition to me around the main thing we want to talk about today is really developing an AI first culture in your organization. And I guess I'm teasing this a little bit by saying, my favorite use case is actually putting in my earbuds, going for a walk, and having a strategic conversation with my AI tool. I mean, that's really sort of like a very big cultural change in terms of how work is done. I mean, I have a standing desk. I stand when I work. I'm a guy that likes to move a lot. And so, for me, the ability to be sort of like, using AI on the move is a huge cultural shift, right? And to be
Mhm.
able to obviously have meetings on the move and all this kind of stuff is that's actually how I do my best thinking. So for our organization, we're not quite there yet in terms of me be able to sort of do Zoom calls while I'm on walks or whatever, though we're kind of there. Uh, but let's talk about that sort of a prelude to my vision of a culture and an organization where people are using these tools in cool new ways. But what do you think about, Josh, when you think about sort of an AI first culture and what's important in developing and establishing one?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is that this is the not developer, not like super technical side of it. This is the people side of it, the part that's most complicated actually, and the
Mhm.
part that's most important for successful overall organizational AI adoption. It's helping people change the way that they work. And as you were saying that, I was thinking back to like, it's all about how people interact with information. Like, if you look generationally, before computers were here, where did we find information? Well, you talked to people and they shared information and facts. You would have books. Like, I remember growing up with like a full encyclopedia stack that was like getting dusty on the shelf. And we would, like, when I was a kid before I was right when the internet was like becoming a thing. I was born in late
Yeah,
90s. So
yeah,
I'm like just old enough to remember, like I learned how to write in cursive. I learned how to read on a computer. Like that was my like at least my context. But I remember the encyclopedias where we found information, and then it was like, oh, every year we would get the Guinness Book of World Records and read all this all these information magazines that would come in the mail. It was like that was our entertainment, and then it was like pair that with audiobooks, pair that with like, oh, YouTube comes online. Younger generations are used to this process of like, I've dealt with a bajillion apps my entire life. So learning something new in terms of technology is actually like second nature. I was born this way. But if you roll up like, to different generations before mine, the millennial generation, the Gen X, the boomer generation, the silent generation, like every single generation had huge transformational shifts in how information was accessible. And in business, that was super critical. Like the internet age was like, the dot-com era was huge in business. It allowed global, enterprise, global commercialization for things because now you could connect to someone across the globe. This AI is like you can connect instantly to all the information and anything. And where we're going is like you can connect to all the tools, not just the information in the tools, but like you can control the tools instantly. And when we talk about voice, this is where it's exciting. You can interact with those apps because of your voice, not because you sat here with a mouse and a keyboard. No more.
yeah,
So that's like truly what's happening, which is massive. So when it comes to people and culture, we're not asking people to like, hey, we're changing from Microsoft to Google Workspace, like your
right.
email is going to be in a different URL. We're saying where you look for information is fundamentally changing because now instead of having to go look and find, the information can be delivered right to you. All you have to do
Right.
is, hey, I want to know what happened in the news yesterday. You can ask your smartphone about that now, and it'll pull up like one news source and look at like what are the hot, articles of the day. But like if you wanted to look at the whole internet, you can just do that with Perplexity. Like and ask AI and they'll provide you the answers, not push you to the web page to have to search through a bunch of articles. Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
the difference. So when we talk about people and culture, it's a huge preface because it's fundamentally we're asking people to shift like their mindset to shift like where do you go when you say AI first with people and culture in mind, you're talking about I turn to AI first to help me
First.
fix or solve or do this thing,
Yeah.
not I figured it out because I beat my head on the wall for 2 hours reading documentation,
Right.
not I went and had a meeting with a colleague who had experience and they taught me how to do it, not, and the classic way of like sitting through video trainings forever and taking tests and quizzes, like it's all changing. So
Yeah.
it is no small task, but what it takes is like adaptability and intuition and curiosity. And those like are skills that you have to earn with time. Like you have to put
Yeah.
time. And that's, I think, the hard part right now for a lot of people to understand. Changing the way you work there's no magic pill, there's no shortcut, there's no like AI tool that will give you AI intuition.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time
Yeah.
with the tool, right? Like it's the
Yeah.
relationship you build with, I say like GPT and me is how I describe like my relationship with ChatGPT. And I have like I would sometimes describe it as these are like weird things to say right now, but in I think a year or two they'll be like totally normal. Like I have a very fruitful relationship with Claude. Like
Right.
right, like who says that? But I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah.
actually it does like 60% of my work right there with me. And like you said, your preferred modality is voice. Mine is like having a document, looking at the document with Claude and like talking to it.
Yeah.
And I like that because I can like do this, send something to it, go walk, fill up my water, come back, sit down. All right, it's provided a response, it's updated the file. Now we're looking at it together, like, oh, let's change this. And then I like bring on, a team member, like, let's look at this together. What do you think we should tell it? Like, that's how we're starting to change the way we work. And we would rather lean on these tools that have IQs bigger than any colleagues that we work with. They
Yeah.
have more
Yeah.
context than we could possibly, like, the whole internet's in there.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I always call it the ultimate big picture thinking machine, right? Like it knows
yeah,
all of everything and it can sort of piece
right.
a bunch of ideas together and sort of make things happen. Like, right?
Yeah. But
Bring ideas together.
here's the thing, like you and I get it because we've been hanging out in these tools for years now. To someone who's brand new, talk through how we start to get someone off the ground who's not interested or hasn't been involved with AI before. Because I think you do a really good job, Peter, of pulling people into this realm, especially that your tourism clients and the way that you help them understand the basics, but then like comfortably step into like their first chat experience. Like talk through that.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually it's interesting. So I did two sessions yesterday, workshops yesterday with two groups from the same company. So we're doing, just for context, we have our AI adoption framework, which is a three-phase process. And it really, that framework was really designed around this entire conversation, right? So I always tell people AI adoption is a people and culture issue first, a structure and processes issue second, and then a technology and adoption sort of issue third, right? So we start off with AI literacy. And so yesterday we were doing our first session, AI literacy session with two groups. And largely these groups were actually, it's interesting that you mentioned this, but they were boomers. And so literally, it's very, very, what is a large language model? So first you got to sort of just like lay out the definitions, help people understand the basics, right? So we went through all that. And interesting things came up when I was talking about the fact that these things hallucinate. Yesterday, one of the people was like, well, I don't have time to double check its work because I'm a busy person. And I said, well, do you have staff? And he said, yes. And I said, well, do you double check your staff's work? And I said, yes. He said, yes. And I said, well, you need to treat this just like you have like a brand new staff person. That's your new assistant. And how would you treat your new assistant? Right. And so even though you almost have to give these things like a persona, right? And treat them, it's like, this is your new assistant and they're here to help you do a job. And so how would you train your new assistant? Well, you would give them all the details, you'd give them all the context, you'd lay out all the expectations, you'd be very clear. You'd give them time to come back. Then when they came back with their work, then you would check their work. Then you would give them more feedback, right? So it's actually like a process of thinking about, like, we've never used technology like this before because it never has been like this, right? So now all of a sudden we're using a technology, a software that does not act like a software, it acts like a human. And so you need to almost treat it like a human, right? So that's sort of how I start. And then the other point about the process is I've really noticed in these classes that people just need permission. And so we go through an exercise. So we go through, I teach everything, we explain all these things, and then we do an exercise, we do an activity, right? And I have a couple tricks in the way we do the activity. So I make the people do the activity. They do the activity and it's awesome. So I sit there and I watch and their eyes light up because like literally their first time ever using ChatGPT, and they do this activity and it does all this amazing stuff and their eyes like literally light up. It's like
Yeah.
amazing, right? And then we have a discussion about, okay, well, how did you do the activity? How did you do it differently? And everybody came at it a different way. And that sort of is another aha moment for, oh, there's not just one, because the activity is designed in a specific way to be like, here's a set of instructions, follow these instructions, right? So I sit there and my trick is people sit there typing frantically, trying to go through the instructions one by one or whatever, right? And then other people just sort of like take the overall concept of what we're doing and kind of create one prompt with all the
Mhm.
details in it, right? So they finish faster, right? And then my little thing I like to do is I take a picture of the instructions, I load it up into my chat GPT and say, just do these instructions, right? So
Yeah.
I'll do that. And like 30 seconds later, I'll be like, I'm done. Anybody else done? Right. And like everybody's frantic, right? And then the whole conversation becomes about there are so many different ways to do this, right? And that
Right.
really a lot of light bulbs go off, a lot of aha moments, right? And then it's just about going deeper and giving people experience and then really explaining to people that this is not regular software. This is it behaves differently. And so there's some foundational things to know and understand, but to your point, then it's all about use and developing a relationship with the tool and how do you use the tool and learning, right? And making and having a tool hallucinate. Like the first time I used Gemini, it hallucinated for me and it told me it'd get back to me in a week. And I was like, I waited a whole week. I was like, what? I came back in a week and I'm like, Gemini, how you doing? I was like, I don't know. It just like caught me at a bad time, right? And it was like, oh yeah, frick, it was hallucinating, right? So, you have to experience those things to understand those things, right? And you have to sort of go through that
Yeah.
yourself. And then also, you need to then have like organization wide conversations about these things, right? So you need to develop little councils, you need to develop little working groups, you need to have little maybe hackathons or little best practice conversations, right? So that's where you start to embed the learnings organizationally is by enabling everybody to use the tools individually and then sort of bringing those learnings from those conversations or those experiences up, right? And then that's sort of like how you start to begin to develop that culture.
Yeah, that's beautiful. A couple things that I think about as like people are getting into this for the first time that's so weird is like not every single employee has been a manager. And
Yes.
not even so much as a manager, but like think if you were like the CEO, like an executive. An executive has like multiple assistants, like big companies. Think about this. And it's so hard like to talk to someone like even someone who's like say fresh out of college. Like you're the grunt in the team. You have an entry level associate role. We've all been there. But like there's never a promise that's like, hey, you need to figure out what needs to be done over the first year, and then after the first year, we're going to give you 12 assistants. Like there's this huge like opportunity. It doesn't cost 12 assistants, millions of dollars a year for every single person to have the 12 assistants now. And like you said, it's all about defining the roles. I like to think of it as interns. Like if you go back a year, the level of like support that you could get from like ChatGPT even was like high school intern. A high school intern can probably do one good thing at a time. You have to be pretty clear, very like keep it very focused, like laser focused, and don't give it too much responsibility. Obviously, don't I say it, I'm talking about the AI, not the human. Like
Yeah.
don't let them like branch off and do their own thing because they really need to stay focused. They only have a few hours at a time. Yada yada yada. Fast forward to now, we're at like PhD level. And like with the reasoning updates that have come, like AI is far more capable at least pretending like it knows how to think through stuff and it can logically
Right.
lay out plans for itself and whatnot. And it's convincing. And if you go to white collar work like what we do, it's very helpful in that regard. But people don't know that's where it's at. Therefore, they don't know that they could have like their own team of PhDs like on their team doing the things with them, helping them solve problems or brainstorm or think, and then let alone like talking to these people and getting like their perspectives based off of their like whatever niche kind of thing. It's like so the intern analogy is a helpful thought exercise because yeah, if you've never had anybody on your team before, delegating, communicating, managing is like all like that's the hard part. And
Mhm.
that's all people stuff. That's all like people and culture. Once again, it's like it
Yeah.
comes down to like if you could manage a team of people, then you can certainly manage your own little team of AI assistants.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I'm
they
going to
need
pause you on
structure.
that note and just say, like, so one of the questions I like that you and I have discussed in terms of asking at like an enablement session is like, okay, so imagine you have a new assistant starting next week. What do you need to do today to prepare to set that assistant up for success, right? And so, like, what parts of your job are you going to delegate? What information do they need in order to execute that part of the job, right? So there's a whole, to your point, leadership strategic planning sort of exercise to go through in order to set your assistant up for success, right? And so obviously people who are really good managers with a little bit of creativity are going to do amazing if they can sort of put those skills to work in terms of like deploying a set of AI tools, if you will, to be their assistants, right?
Right, exactly. And to the second point, as you were talking about, like getting someone comfortable on step 0 to 1, like use ChatGPT for the first time. It's fascinating how many people, like everybody starts like do you can see like so much into the like a window into their world based off of where they start. Like what you give
Yeah.
them like a document, like here's a PDF, we put it on the screen, we talk through it, here's the instructions. here's the link to the file in the chat, and then seeing what people do. Some people, copy paste. Some people are like typing. Some people are like picture in. I'm like, download the file, upload it to my chat bot, and be like, help. But then as they get more comfortable, like there's so many different, like it's good to practice all those different ways, because you think about like workflows and productivity. It's like if you get into a groove where you're creating ideas and then you're like copying and pasting back and forth. Right now, if you're using ChatGPT, that's kind of what it's like.
Mhm.
Fast forward to using more integrated tools where we build custom solutions, and this is what we're really excited about because we're building something like this. It's like instead of having to move information here, there, and everywhere in and out of your your chatbot tools. Imagine a workplace where it's all together, and that's like a
Yeah.
huge shift. That is, it's not like, oh, we've solved this and we've got the answer. This is like everybody's trying to figure out what's the future workplace look like, and it has to be far more connected than it is now. Right now, you can piece together 20 to 100 tools for your company, and that can like run everything smoothly with technology. Integrating all of those tools is where the hard part is, and that's where it's expensive.
Hmm.
In the future, the integration component will be far less relevant because we can just build the features that are in all these tools. Like
Right.
the cost of coding is going down, the cost of building these networks is going down. The cost of hosting all of the tools that you need in one place is, in some cases, not even a coding project anymore. It's no code. There's platforms that exist like this.
Yeah.
And that's like from a people and culture standpoint, we also have to continue to be so adaptable because, yeah, we used Calendly to book meetings last year, but like Google's product is just as good, or this other product is just as good now, or we have our own version that we built in house that's just as good with more features. That's the sort of thing that like as you get comfortable on an individual level with just using chat tools and talking and having your own say relationship with the AI, there's so many other like infrastructure level things that are going to be changing. And part of the AI intuition is like finding comfort in that adaptability, knowing
Yeah.
that like the future is a little ambiguous. The
Yeah.
tasks that we're doing will be 100% different in a year, in 5 years, in 10
Yeah.
years. So it's not necessarily like people always say like, oh, this XYZ AI tool just hit customer service. Now there's customer service reps are dead. They always say this like hyperbole, like X X role is dead because X
Right.
tool
Right.
is here now. And it's not that. It's certain tasks of that are now
Right.
no longer relevant. Like picking up the phone may not be the most important thing, but talking to customers is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, wait a second, how's that work? Well, we have to break down every little thing. And that's I think a huge component of like changing the way people work is also helping them figure out how to document systems and processes.
Right.
And in order to document, you have to actually understand that your job is a combination of systems and processes that make up the
Right.
work.
Right.
People
Yeah.
don't think like that because it's not been required. Like we live in an unstructured business environment for most jobs, at
Yeah.
least in terms of structured data and structured like tasking. Like, if you're in customer service, you pick up the phone, you help answer queries. We don't even call them queries, you answer people's questions, right? But when you're
Yeah.
talking to AI is like, what's the query? What's the intent? What are the utterances that indicate that intent? And it's like those are all like buzzwords and technology. But in normal human world, like we don't even have to talk about that. You're like, oh yeah, if they ask for this, like here's where you find the file that gives you the
Right.
information. You don't have to program that to somebody. They just understand because that's human nature. These are the
Yeah.
things we don't think about writing down, like, but in terms of computer, it's helpful for programmers. They understand it because computers only do what we tell them they can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the difference with AI is AI can think about what it wants to do and decide what's the right thing and not necessarily just follow these if then if else kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, one of a couple things come to mind as you're talking. So number one is, if you think about AI is taught on the world's information, if you will, the world's knowledge that's online and available, it's actually taught on outputs. It's not taught on the processes that got to those outputs. So there's work to be done in terms of like understanding the processes to get to the outputs so that we can understand how to deploy the AIs to their best ability to help you serve you in your job, right? So there's a whole job to do there. And I'm going to go back to our AI adoption framework because, really phase one is this AI literacy. So that's just getting people comfortable using the tools, feeling, okay, I've tried it. Here's a couple different techniques. And I'm going to mention also, we talk about ChatGPT a lot because it's
Yeah.
probably the easiest starting place. But I think it's important also in what you said there to be fairly technology agnostic, right? So
Right.
the leading edge is going to change. Different tools can do different things. That's why we're building a platform where you're going to be able to basically toggle between tools to do different tasks. And we're going to give you advice and recommendations and education on maybe this tool is the best for this tool is the best for that, right? So Perplexity is a good research tool, for example. Claude is a great writing tool, for example, right? And et cetera, et cetera. If you want to create an image, here's a tool that's better than this one, right? So there are definitely currently preferences, but when we build this platform, we're going to be able to, on the back end as developers, update the tools and sort of bring the best to our community
Yep.
so that they can just have it all in one place, right? So that's so that technology agnostic piece is going to be important. Then phase two of our process is really around structures and processes and creating a vision and creating some, because the other thing people want to know, it's like, okay, you start using the tools, you start warning people about things that could happen and things you shouldn't do. Well, then they need some parameters. They need their own guardrails, if you will, in terms of what can I do, what can I not do, where am I, right? And then we get into phase three, which is like enablement, and this is what you're talking about, which is really kind of now uncovering all the tasks you do and the processes you do and sort of documenting things and figuring out where AI can help solve some problems and solutions and things like that, right? So it's a process, right? It's a phased process. And what I like about where I want to transition this conversation into is top down versus bottom up, because it needs to be both, right? So our process has baked into it both a top down approach in terms of developing some structure and some processes and some roadmaps and some whatever, but also a bottom up approach where we want to hear from employees. We want to understand their roles. We want to understand where AI can help. We want to teach them. Like ultimately, my opinion, and I'd love to hear yours on this, is that like fundamentally it's the bottom up approach that's actually going to drive organization-wide AI adoption. And the role of the top down and the leaders is to just sort of create first of all, the culture, like the workspace, the ability to to use the tools and the parameters through which, here's where you can use them, here's where you can't, sort of the set the rules of the game, if you will, right? I think the top down can also play a role in terms of incentivizing, creating contests, maybe whatever, like awards, creating space, right? So I'm going to just quickly talk about a project we have internally called Project Trailblazer. And so I've basically told my team, I expect you to spend 1 hour of every single day learning about AI tools, experimenting with AI tools, listening to podcasts, like just like learning, right? And then, so I've set a culture and an expectation, right? And then we've set some goals. Okay, we're going to be 25% more efficient doing this. We're going to reduce our number of hours we do doing this. And and then it's like sort of the bottom up part is, okay, what do we need to do to enable you to actually achieve all of this, right? And sort of what do you need? You know your job better than I know. I don't know what you do every single day. So I can't sit here and try to tell you how AI is going to support you and help you, because you're the expert, right, in your job. So can you kind of speak to that and give me your perspective on it?
Yeah, I think you noted something that's like really important that I think people miss is like by assigning your team to spend time on this, like you've allocated resources. If it's 1 hour a day per person, that's what a tenth of their time. Is
Yeah.
that fair? Like a
Yeah.
tenth of their time is dedicated to this. So a tenth of your payroll is now dedicated, your payroll cost is now dedicated to developing productivity with AI,
Yeah.
right? And I think so many company leaders are asking this question of like, what should we be doing? Like, yes, you need to get all the policies started. You need to create like a vision for how do you relate to AI in this company? What advantages can AI unlock for your business compared to your market and your competitors and, the way that you take care of your customers? It's about unlocking resources. Like that's leadership's role. Like ultimately, you give structure, you pave a way, you clear a path so that it's not like your team is just left to figure out where to go. Like you help them figure out the direction and it should align with where you've already been going as a business. Like this isn't like AI doesn't mean that your business has to all of a sudden be something that it's not. And that's a common pitfall we see is company leaders think, okay, AI, so we need an AI core product and we should have some sort of discussion with an AI consultant about building our own. Like there's this like core product idea, which is super cool to think about, but they don't have a product team. They don't have data scientists. They have no,
Right.
they
They've
have no
never
tech.
done
They don't even
anything
have an
like this in their,
IT guy. And it's
yeah.
like, tell me you're going to be some industry leading technology company, but you were a service business before, you were a
Right.
destination, like you're a
Right.
hotel. Like
Yeah.
Like, and so that's why I think there's a mind your business component, there's an unlock resources for leadership, and then there's the lead your team, like genuinely. And on the people side, it's knowing it's learning how to start to write down the things that you do. If it's not written down or saved somewhere in a file, AI is not going to help you. Like if you just go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I'm the marketing guy. I'm writing blogs for my destination. We're a B&B, and we have a fall season coming up. That's our hot spot. So we want to write a bunch of content." It's like without all the like that's basic context, but like what is ChatGPT going to know about your company if you haven't written down your company brief? If you haven't provided all the examples of other stuff you've done, if you haven't shown it like here's how all this other stuff performed, like, and connect the dots and start to like actually do some like pulling together. So there's like on the people side, there's like minding your own business, same like similar goal, like mind your business in terms of get organized, store your files in a consistent way, name your files right. Like that's like it's housekeeping. And I think, depending on your personality type, that might not be how you're wired, that might not be your preference, but like there are tools that can help you with this. But it's so important to start to get organized so that you don't, you're not just having to do that later. It's going to happen sometime. You might have to do it in the next 5 years, but why would you wait till 5 years to start receiving benefits you could be getting now? And then also then figuring out what your unique relationship with AI is going to look like. Is it going to be you using, whatever tool is most performant, like, and switching and being flexible, or is it you going super deep into like, say, you're just going to become an OpenAI nerd. You're going to learn how to build custom GPTs for yourself. You're going to learn how to connect functions to the stuff. Like, those are more technical endeavors, but like, the more time you spend, the more like you start to see, oh, if this could just do that, it would really help me, and then you realize it's possible. All you have to do is point those things out as an individual. So it's like you said, it's on people to start to learn where they can raise their flag and say, yes, I actually do think I need help in this way, or I want to delegate this off because this is taking up, say, 40% of my time. And I know AI could do it because I've been testing it on an individual basis. Those are the sorts of things that will transform jobs and job descriptions. And so if you're looking at like people and culture as a whole and like zooming back up to like who's the middleman, like HR is commonly like they're writing job descriptions, they're helping managers hire people, they're helping with benefits, payroll, tasking, job descriptions. It's really honing in on the tasking and job descriptions piece to help people understand like, okay, if this was your job before, but we figured out 40% of this AI can really help you with and take it off your plate, what's the other 50 to 100% of stuff that you haven't been able to get to yet? Because you've just been too busy. And everybody has that. But leadership doesn't know what those things are. And like individual people need to be given permission, like, hey, we do think like you should be making the decisions about how to spend your time. And if you think there's something that's more valuable that's going to help, increase our relationships with the customers and increase satisfaction or drive more revenue or create leverage, like whatever those things are, like people individually can bring that value to the table as at any level in the company.
Yeah, and what I like to say, and this is, you and I have done a couple of these sessions together, but it's like ultimately too at the individual person level, it's like we'll go in and have a conversation at the sort of phase 3 of our process is like, what do you do every single day or every couple of days that's data driven, repetitive, and quite frankly that you hate doing, right? So what's the easiest way to drive cultural change is to like remove the tasks that people hate doing every day and free them up to do the things they love to do, right? So it's such an unlock, and it's such a like an easy way, but you need to do this in a structured way, right? So again, from the top down, if you're just like, here's 30,000 or here's 30 licenses to ChatGPT, go. It's like nobody knows what to do. People need permission. People need to walk through. They need the like literacy. They need to like experience it. Then they need to like they don't know what they don't know, right? This is what I'm learning is people just don't know what they don't know. And so they're even if they start using the tools, unless somebody shows them a couple like little things here, a couple little things there, explains to them what's possible, it's really like not many people are naturally inquisitive in a way with technology specifically to like really sort of like really break the boundaries of what's possible, right? That's sort of like that's a personality type, right? That's like a first mover kind of personality type, right? So you need to create systems and processes internally to get those champions to sort of share what they're doing and create a sort of a culture of sharing and a culture of innovation, right? So that's a little down the line, right? But yeah, but even just a group like us coming in and sort of spending a little bit of time with your team, showing them a little couple tricks along the way, the little unlocks. I can see it. I can really see it when we go through these processes, like the excitement. I go to one session and then I come to the next session and people are like, Peter, I didn't use Google once this week. Oh my God, I used Perplexity. It was amazing. And it's like, they always tell me these like life-changing things. And it's like that's the spark that needs to be there in order to sort of drive kind of deeper change along the value chain, along the organization, right?
Yeah, it's that individual momentum that like if you combine it, it's infected. Like it'll infect the
Yes.
rest of your team. And that's why
Yeah.
we build these councils. That's why we, establish like AI champions and teams. Because we need people who are like standing there with a bullhorn, like I used ChatGPT to do this, I use
Yeah.
Perplexity for that. Like, and
Yeah.
it's like and it's gonna unblock someone. I know like it can be generational, maybe it's not. Like I've had mixed results with every generation of people that I've
Hmm.
worked with, like from
Hmm.
like Gen Z to all the way up to like yeah boomers who are still in the workforce in their 80s. And like everybody everybody just needs to believe, like to have someone show them that this thing can do something productive for them.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
they're blocked, that's the thing, like that's the turning point. If we show like
Yeah.
this grumpy IT guy who has to do some SQL every now and then, that he can just write all of his SQL queries with ChatGPT, he's like, wait a second. And
Wait
you're
a
like,
minute.
yeah, every time. What if instead of dusting off your SQL handbook that you have on the shelf, you just let it do it for you, and you know enough to like tinker from there, and they're like, oh, and then but they're never going to be that enthusiastic, but they're going to come back to you in like a month or two and be like, yeah, I'm saving an hour a day, and you're like, oh,
Right.
okay, we're on the
Right.
path.
Yeah.
It's that on times however many people in your team. And when we
Yeah.
look at productivity, it's like I think everybody individually, like we've had feedback from all of those sessions we've done over the past couple of years. It's like on average, those that chose to lean in have seen about a 20 to 40% boost after even just a couple of training sessions in
Yeah.
productivity and data. Like truly, like marketing, data
Yeah.
people, sales, accountants, like we've seen it across all these different job functions, and it's only getting better. Like there's only more to learn, more to come. So it's so beautiful to see people across the culture as they start to lean in. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing that keeps companies. It's going to hold them back if they don't lean in and they don't empower their team and
Yeah.
equip them with the tools that they need, and actually like carve out time. Like if you just assigned learn AI, and so many do fall into this pitfall, like boss, like CEOs, like we got to prioritize this. Everybody do something. And then it doesn't actually like impact the day to day in a way where they're like, yeah, we're actually carving out like 10% of your bandwidth is now carved out for this. Do
Yeah.
trainings. You have here's your individual performance development fund. Everybody spend $1,000 on AI tools this year. Like if
Exactly.
you're not doing that type of enablement, then you're asking people to just stack it on the pile with all the other work that they have.
Yeah.
We've seen people get stuck here where they're like, I'm too busy. Why would I spend all this time learning? And we're like, isn't that the point of getting 20% more productive, that you wouldn't have this pile? Like this is a cyclical thing. But if they're not being supported from leadership, how are they going to get there? It's just one more
Yeah.
thing. So
Exactly. Yeah. No, and I like what you said there because again, we sort of like to your point, I mandate 10% towards learning. And I will say that, when you're new to this whole thing, there is a learning curve and you're probably going to be less, it's going to cost you more time initially until it starts saving you time. But the learning curve is really fast. Like that's the thing. And especially if you're focused on those high value, low risk activities that are also activities that, you're removing parts of your job that you hate. So for me, it's an energy game, right? So it's like
mm,
all of the stuff that drains my energy is like AI is like really good at just getting those things done. So I can focus on the stuff I love. That gives me more energy, makes me more productive, and it's like sort of like sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So there's a bit of a learning curve, but it's short. Once you get over the hump, you start to really uncover the use cases and like the magic starts to happen. So, my 10% I'm investing in my staff, we're for sure in the 40 to 50% range of productivity improvements, right? I mean, we're pumping stuff out like crazy and it's quality or number of back and forths on content. For example, obviously we do a lot of content marketing. Our clients are not or the approvals are quick, so that saves the back and forth with the clients are happier, so it's just
mm.
like on and on and on. Anyway, speaking of on and on and on, I feel like you and I could talk about this topic all day, every day. We're both kind of we both geek out on HR a little bit. We both have a
Yeah.
passion for people and culture. So Maybe we'll talk about this again in the future, but I think let's cut it off there, and we'll bring it back maybe in a couple months after we've gone through a few processes with a few companies. So thanks, Josh, for your time. Please do subscribe, share, like, do all the things for the podcast. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time. Cheers.
Thanks for joining Peter and Josh on another episode of the Tourism AI podcast, where they dive into the AI tools they're building to help tourism operators and DMOs perform, as well as other relevant updates for the tourism industry. Stay up to date between episodes at tourismainetwork.com or on socials at Tourism AI Network.